Africa is emerging in the 21st century as one of the most economically dynamic and strategically relevant areas of the world. The continent has the fastest growing population on the planet, and it's home to more than 50 countries, many of which have large natural resource and precious metal reserves. It's a place of great challenges for U.S. foreign and national security. A wave of 8 military coups have taken place in West and Central Africa since 2020, and China and Russia are increasingly rivaling Washington's attempts to promote stability and foster democracy on the continent. I'm Guy Taylor, National Security Editor at The Washington Times, and for this edition of the Threat Status Influencers series, we're honored to be joined by U.S. Ambassador Johnnie Carson, the renowned American diplomat who has served as ambassador to Kenya, Zimbabwe, and Uganda, and as Assistant Secretary of State for African Affairs. He's a longtime advisor here at the U.S. Institute of Peace. Ambassador, thank you for joining me.
Guy, pleasure to be with you this afternoon.
Recent years have seen the Biden administration attempt to revamp lagging U.S. relations with Africa through high-level diplomatic visits and promises of vast private investments. At the center of the push was a major African leaders summit at the White House in late 2022. President Biden tapped you as his special representative for implementation of American pledges made at that summit, a role you held throughout 2023. Let's jump right into this. Critics say the White House effort has barely managed to counter trade, economic, and military inroads that China has established in Africa over the past decade. But the U.S. does have a robust policy, and you were at the center of it. Has the Biden administration push been a success, and how?
Guy, thank you very much. I was honored to be asked to serve as the president's special representative for the implementation of the many pledges and commitments that were made by President Biden and the administration at the December 2022 U.S.-Africa Leaders Summit. It's only the second time in U.S. history that the United States government has invited all of the leaders from Africa to come to Washington to meet with senior U.S. officials. The first time was during the Obama administration in 2014. The summit was an enormous success. Leaders from 49 of the 54 African countries came, and President Biden, Vice President Harris had an opportunity to say to those leaders personally and directly that the U.S. is all in on Africa, that it recognizes the value and importance of partnership with the African continent, that Africa is indeed on the move, and that Africa deserves higher and more significant U.S. attention. During that summit, the U.S. government committed itself to providing $55 billion in assistance to Africa over the next 3 years. Much of this money will go into supporting, strengthening, and building out some of the most successful programs that the United States government has implemented across the continent.
Are those investments actually coming through at this point, though? Because we're well over a year out from the summit, and $55 billion is a lot of money, but what has been accomplished?
A lot of things have been accomplished both on the political and on the economic side. One of the most significant things to happen on the political side was, in fact, President Biden's commitment to work to have Africa become a permanent member of the G20. The United States also committed itself to working with other members of the UN and the Security Council to expand the Security Council to give Africa a permanent place on the Security Council as a non-veto holding member. But let me give you some examples of what's happened on the economic front. For the very first time, the U.S. government has agreed to go along and work in partnership with 6 other entities: the European Union, the African Development Bank, and the governments of Angola, Zambia, and the Democratic Republic to build a railroad from Angola's Lobito port to Zambia, connecting into the Congo, in order to bring out mineral-rich production to the Atlantic coast. It is called the Lobito Project along the Lobito Corridor. Lobito is a major port on the Atlantic coast in Angola, and it will connect that port to the Democratic Republic of Congo's Katanga area, and also to the Copper Belt in Zambia.
Why should Americans care about this? What is the relevance of this to greater U.S.
The relevance is tied up in energy. Africa is one of the most mineral-rich continents in the world. It has some 35% of all of the most important minerals needed to accomplish and transform economies into green energy economies. Africa has an abundance of the 5 key minerals that are necessary for the production of batteries: lithium, manganese, nickel, cobalt, and phosphates. Those things are absolutely essential for creating batteries. The U.S. government separately has signed a memorandum of understanding with the government of Zambia and with the government of the Democratic Republic of the Congo to develop a full value chain of batteries, from the mining of minerals to the processing of minerals to the development and production of batteries. This helps to eliminate China as a middleman. Most of Africa's minerals, in fact, are shipped out unprocessed, most of them going to places like China, and then processed, turned into manufactured goods, and then sent on to the United States and other places. By working directly with African countries like Zambia, like the Democratic Republic of the Congo, helping them to build processing and manufacturing there, they can ship directly to the United States without having to use China as a source of processing and manufacturing. It's a win-win proposition for the United States and for these African countries.
There is a view that there is Cold War-style great power competition between China and the United States playing out in Africa. China, in recent years, prior to the African Leaders Summit here, was really out-investing the United States across the continent by almost 400%. The U.S. military leaders have warned about increasing Chinese military activities on the continent. We had the Pentagon warning of China building perhaps a naval base in West Africa on the Atlantic coast. All of these things are happening. And what I want to ask you is the U.S. approach a mirror of what China's been doing with its Belt and Road Initiative, or is it really different? It seems like you've been somewhat famous years ago in a leaked diplomatic cable talking about China and suggesting that China's didn't have morals with its approach, or that China's posture towards the African continent as Beijing rose as a global economic power has been purely extractive. Do you still feel that way, and do you see this as a kind of great power game that's playing out?
Let me first of all say, and step back a little bit, and say that the approach that the United States has taken towards working with in partnership with African countries, its development approach and support has been different largely from that of China. The United States has invested in working in partnership with Africa to improve public health, to expand agricultural production and food security, to work with African societies to build their democratic institutions, and not just holding elections, but building their democratic institutions, working with civil society, judiciaries, parliaments, to strengthen them. It has also been working to help strengthen Africa's education sector as well. The U.S. has invested huge amounts of money very successfully in a whole range of programs that have benefited Africa. PEPFAR, the President's Emergency Program to prevent the spread of HIV and AIDS. In fact, last year in 20 2023, it celebrated its 20th anniversary. That program has saved 25 million lives across the continent in its 20 years of existence.
But China is not participating.
China's programs have largely focused on infrastructure. And that infrastructure is something that Africans need, but these infrastructure projects have largely been negotiated in opaque fashion. People in the countries don't know what the government has agreed to do to sell their minerals. And many times, some of these negotiations have been opaque, they have been barter deals, and they've lacked the kind of openness and transparency.
Would you describe them as predatory?
I would describe them as opaque and non-transparent, because very little is known about them. But the other thing that is important to say about all of this is that African countries have agency. They have the ability to trade with whom they want. What we do say to them is to hold China to the same standards that they would hold an American company to, or to a Western or democratic country to. Let's see what the deals say. Let's see what is involved in them. But more importantly, when you do these deals, it's important to make sure that there are proper labor standards involved, proper health standards involved, proper environmental standards involved in all of these deals, and that there be programs both to utilize, train, and advance African skills and technology as a part of this. Many of these deals are not like that. Many of these deals are financial deals, they're non-grant deals, and the terms of these deals are not known, and the quality of the work sometimes is not up to par. When you're dealing with a Western country, you know what the legal standards are and how you can enforce them and defend them.
Let's talk about the status of democracy and democratic stability across the continent. 2024, I believe there are 23 different either presidential or parliamentary elections happening on the continent. At the same time, since 2020, there have been 7 successful military coups, 1 unsuccessful, mainly in Central and Western Africa. Since we're talking about this within the context of U.S. and China competition, how do you read these coup developments? I've spoken with others here at USIP who have suggested not that China or Russia or other international players are responsible for the coups, but perhaps that a military junta that takes control in a country, Niger, for example, at the moment, a lot playing out there with a military coup. Do these developments benefit autocratic powers? Is China capitalizing on them, Russia trying to exploit them? There are lots of reports about Russian mercenary Wagner Group militias in several African countries also getting involved in resource extraction. How do all of these things fit together within the picture of these wave of military coups?
Got a lot of things there. Let me disaggregate some of them for you. First of all, coups fundamentally hurt the societies in which they take place. They disrupt the political process, they undermine economic advancement, and they create social instability. And they generally lead to a strong man coming into power. There are probably 4 or 5 reasons for coups to take place in Africa. And all coups do not take place for the same reason. But we do have concerns about what sets these things off. We see one can be the inability of governments to deal effectively with armed conflict, terrorism, and civil unrest. This has been the case in part in Burkina Faso and also in Mali. Some coups are the result of bad governance and poor electoral processes. This is the case in Gabon. Some coups are the result of grievances held by military officers against their leadership. This is the case in Niger, where the head of the Presidential Guard decided that he would not accept an order to change commands and instead took over the presidency. But what we do see here as causes for some of these issues are, in fact, bad governance, corruption, political ambition, and civil unrest and terrorism, and fundamentally, clearly, an inability of governments to deliver the dividends of economic progress and stability that democracy should. Yes, when these things happen, it opens the door for malevolent actors to come in, whether it's the Wagner Group in Central African Republic or in Mali. Yes, they seek to come in, but their presence does not improve the economy, and it rarely improves the peace that's required. What we do see in these countries is the governments being protected by these forces, and these forces, like Wagner, exploiting the mineral resources that are there and sending them back overseas to Moscow or to other locations for their own benefit.
Finally, are you hopeful as we close out the first quarter of the 21st century about the future of stability in Africa and economic development and the spread of democracy there?
I am hopeful about Africa, and I want more people to pay attention to Africa. The world is becoming more African, and Africa needs to be
more interconnected with
interconnected and a part of the global decision making and the global progress. Today, Africa comprises some 18% of the global population. And just 25 years from now, Africa will comprise 25% of the global population, meaning one out of every 4 people in the global community will be an African. By the turn of the century, Africa will comprise 40% of the global community. Today, Africa is the youngest and the fastest growing continent in terms of population. The average or median age of an African today is 19. The median age of an Indian national is 28. The median age of a Chinese national is 39. Africa's population is growing staggeringly fast. Another way to look at this is to look at what is happening in Africa's most populous country, Nigeria, which has a population of some 225 million people today. Every day, every week, every month, there are more children born in Nigeria than in all 27 of the states in the European community. So that from Sweden down to Sicily, from the border of Poland over to the Algarve in Portugal, there are more people born in Nigeria than in all of Western Europe. As the world is aging, Africa is growing. And so it is important that Africa be seen to be moving forward, not just in terms of its population, but its ability to sit at the table. The United States should be concerned not just because of the need for critical minerals that are important for the green economy that we all need to fight climate change, but we need Africa's support in places like New York, in Geneva, and Vienna, and at the organizational tables of the United Nations. 54 member states sit in the 192 members of the UN General Assembly. Africa's vote counts. Africa's partnership counts on everything from climate change to law of the sea to human trafficking to the fight on terrorism and money laundering. We need that African voice at the table. It is in the interest of the United States to work as a partner with these countries to help them manage and deal with their challenges, and to do it in an effective way of partnership that makes us stronger and makes them stronger as well.
Ambassador Johnnie Carson, so insightful, so informative. Thank you so much for joining us for this edition of the Threat Status Influencers series. I'm Guy Taylor. Until next time.